Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Sulky Show. And tonight, Sarah and I are joined by the one and only Michael O'Mahony. First of all, good evening, Sarah.
Good evening, Darren.
And good evening, Michael.
Good evening.
Michael, I got this book from the bookshelf here, my mum and dad's, written by Dick Francis. There you go. It's the official biography of Leicester. So, I take it you've got somebody like of Sarah's ilk to write your biography in a few years' time?
I definitely won't be as big as that one anyway.
I can do filler. I can definitely do filler.
We'll see.
Michael, you're a Derby winner now.
Yeah, it was good. Good there 2 weeks ago on Tir Prince. We had a good night. So, yeah, I hope I get as many as Leicester. It'll be all right.
Apparently, Mick Lord's won 9 derbies.
Oh yeah, I saw that a few weeks ago. Actually, yeah, I was pretty impressed with talking about that. Yeah.
So he's the Leicester of harness racing. But yeah, just go back to that famous night at Tir Prince a few weeks ago. You tasted Oak's glory as well with Oakwood Letsboogie, and then the derby with I'm a Happy Fella. Just describe that night, those two drives. Your first classic winner that night was with Oakwood Letsboogie in a division of the Oaks. Just tell us about that drive.
That meant a lot to us because she's been a very kind of awkward filly to train, and she's got issues with her feet and different things, and it's been a kind of a long road with her, and we were close to giving up a few times, but the owner kind of wanted to persevere with her, and we kept going. So obviously it was the weaker one of the two divisions that night, which was a big help to her. We went quite slow early on. She was able to find her feet. She's got a lot of stamina. She's like, even as a 2-year-old training at home, she always like finished off her work very well. But she obviously has a bit of speed as well, as she showed that night when she kind of went from last to pretty much first up the back straight. Yeah, it was really nice. It's a maiden win, but it was quite a nice to get a Group 1 with her for breeding afterwards and everything that'll help her.
And of course, she goes this weekend, doesn't she, in the Little Welsh Dragoness?
Yeah, I don't suppose we'll be going as slow this week. Rainbow Rider's drawn 1, and I'd imagine it'll be more of a kind of true run race. So we'll have to just go see how it goes, really.
And what about the Derby? I mean, how what did that mean to Michael O'Mahony winning the Derby with I'm a Happy Fella?
Yeah, like obviously the Derby, it's anywhere you go in the world, the Derbies are like the race to win, I suppose. We've been a while waiting to get the right kind of horse to do it. Like, we haven't actually had a runner in it before. This horse, he was unlucky last year as a 2-year-old. Like, he finished second in pretty much all the stakes races. It was like kind of a valid excuse every time he ran. If things went his way, he could have probably won a couple of them. Jeff and myself ended up the season thinking we probably had the best 2-year-old, but it just didn't seem to work out that way. And this year now he's come back. Jeff's trained him down himself, and we've had him a while. And he's just a very nice horse. Like, he's very straightforward. His only kind of issue is he doesn't like the grit in his face. But other than that, like, he's very drivable. You can go forward out the gate, go back, do whatever you want with him, really. He's very fast.
Tell us about the race itself.
The plan, like, I kind of knew Vicky was probably going to go forward. Richard surprised me with Stateside Dude. I didn't think he'd probably take Vicky on like that, but my plan was always kind of to follow Rocker, because I pretty much had in my head that he'd end up first up. That very nearly went out the window on the first turn because Rocker's horse galloped, but he got back and he came around me, and I just followed him then. And just turning up the backside, just tipped 3 wide, and he surprised me, to be honest, how easy he cleared them, because they're nice horses. You don't normally run past nice horses as easy as he did, but he was pretty impressive, yeah.
And I've got to say, guys, it was my personal highlight of the season was seeing Jeff Robson's reaction after the race and what it actually meant to him to own and breed a Derby winner.
Yeah, exactly. He's one of the guys, he's been in it all his life, and he's always wanted a horse like this. He's had good horses before, and he won the European Pacing Classic as it was at the time with Thomas the Man and stuff, but he's always been really high on this horse from when he started training himself last year as a 2-year-old, and I'd say he's been dreaming about it. he said he had a dream the night before he was going to win by 10 lengths. So he was pretty confident going into it, but you're never sure, I suppose. Yeah, he was excited. He was down with us early that morning, and he was around the stables all day and stuff, and you could tell he was really excited about it. And that's what it's all about, really, isn't it? Like people to get that excited about racing.
I love your photo, Sarah, with Jeff holding the two cups. Fantastic photo.
Yeah, well, I wanted to commemorate that moment for him. I mean, I could tell he was excited. Protocol went out the window a little bit because he kissed me, but we did have, well, he had a mask on, I think, at that point. I didn't, but...
And you're not from the same household?
Hmm?
You're not from the same household? That's terrible.
No, I think the emotion got the better of him slightly. Well, it certainly did, because he's never tried to kiss me before or since.
He's been trying to do it for years. He's just been waiting for the right opportunity.
It took a Derby win to kiss me. Well, there we go. That's something for everybody else to bear in mind. No, it was one of those moments. I thought with the trophy and with the two trophies that he had, and it was just something that I want. I don't think at the time he was actually committing what was happening to memory, because he was so buzzed up with excitement. It's never happened to me. I've never won a race that caliber before, but I know sometimes when things like that happen, you don't necessarily remember the intricacies of what happened straight afterwards because you're so full of emotion. And it's something that he can look back on, that photo and the other photos as well, and also the video. I know he's watched the video like 100 times already, but it's the stuff that you can look back on once the emotion kind of dies down a little bit and you get back to some level of normality. So yeah.
And he's lining up tomorrow night, said horse. I'm a happy fella in the Dragon race.
He is, yeah. He's got a pretty good draw. He seems in good form, so we'll go around tomorrow night and hopefully we could get the job done. Hopefully.
You're sounding confident, Michael.
He's honestly, like, I'm always confident going out with him, really, because like I know how good he is. But obviously things have to go your way in a race and stuff. But I think we might try and go forward tomorrow night and see, try and take a look out of the equation a little bit maybe.
So we've got Oakwood Letsboogie and I'm a happy fella going in the Dragon and Dragoness races tomorrow night. Two classic winners going for more Group 1 glory. Last weekend they weren't Group 1s, but you must have had an awful lot of satisfaction at Ammon Valley. You had a really good payday at Ammon Valley last weekend, Michael. Yeah,
it was a very good day. Like the first race, the maiden, was obviously winning a maiden in 2:10. Like you wouldn't expect to get that very often, but couple of the other horses made mistakes, and she's a well-related filly, Dare to Dream, but she's just taken a while to get pacing properly and stuff, and it was one of the first times she's gone around and done everything right, and she won pretty comfortable in the end. But the other four I kind of thought had chances, like I was hopeful with them without being confident. But yeah, Talavari Motivator raced really good, and Paddy Connors won on Wellfield Warlock, drove him very well again. That's the second win on him this year. And Lanehouse Girl was pretty impressive too. Lions Rosella, I thought I'd go in there. I thought I'd lead that race from drawn 5, but a couple on the inside left very fast and surprised me a bit. So she came from the back of the field, but she showed a lot of pace to clear them down the backside, and she's a filly with a bit of a future, I think.
So the season's going really well.
Yeah, it is at the moment. We can't complain. Like, touch wood, all the horses seem very healthy, and that, which is obviously the key to having success, I suppose. So if we can keep them healthy for another few weeks, we might have a bit more fun, hopefully.
And then we've spoken about a number of these horses that are actually going to race this weekend over the 2 days at Tir Prince and York. If we could just have a look at the Tir Prince runners tomorrow, your runners at Tir Prince. You've spoken about I'm a Happy Fella and Oakwood Letsboogie. Also on the card, you've got Talavari Motivator, who you mentioned won last week. He's been in good form, winning in Ammon Valley. What chances tomorrow?
He's a horse with an awful lot of ability. I like him an awful lot, but he seems, anytime he's raced on the front end, he hasn't seemed to get home. So we've been kind of racing him off the pace, and he seems to race better that way. But obviously he's drawn 1 tomorrow night. We'll probably try and go forward, I'd say, and see what happens. It's a tough enough race. Like Air Pioneer is a nice horse. I trained him last year, and that is a very nice horse. Frankie B is going good. Honor Code is over from Ireland. He's been on good races on the grass. So he's a bit of an unknown quantity. And obviously Roller Coaster was very impressive in York there a couple of weeks ago. So it's a pretty hot race. I think if we could place, we'd be pretty happy.
Yeah, yeah. And then on to race 6. You're driving for an outside stable. You're driving for Steve Lees, I see, Belle de Noyac.
Yeah. I drove her a couple of weeks ago. She trotted around very well, but she takes a really strong hold behind the gate. Probably I've been told that, but probably stronger than what I thought. I'll hopefully be more ready for her this time. But again, I'd say if she could run a place, I'd say it would be very good for her in that class of race. I think there's a few in there. The last few probably too good, like the 2 Nicholson's and Joby Randall's horses going very well. Stevie's other horse seems a nice horse as well.
Well, so it's a different ball game.
Yeah, the distance, yeah, like because she kind of seems to pull in that, I'd imagine like the distance mightn't suit her as much as some of the others. Andrew's horse is another one there. He's drawn 1. If he gets out the gate, he'll take a lot of catching because he finishes his races very strong. So yeah, I think that might be a bit of a difficult one to get Rosette in.
And then on to the mares race tomorrow. You've got Finlay Wells, who's already been in the winner's circle this year at York.
She has. She's a very nice, genuine filly. Like I know she's been beaten in a few races around 2-2 and 2-3, but things haven't really gone her way. She drew 6 twice and got taken back out the gate. The one horse didn't leave either time, and I think she's a filly capable. She's been 2 minutes in Tir Prince before, just over it, and I think on a good day she could break 2 minutes. But this is an exceptional race. Like there's half a dozen mares in there that you just love to own. Besides her, she's another one that you'd love to have. Obviously, Newtown Jodie, if she puts her best foot forward, she'd be the one to beat. But there's Teton Preacher and the 2 Reeds mares. Frisco Gin on her day is very capable. And Air Impress was very impressive in York the last time in the mares race. Lions Queen's on a bit of a roll as well. So and Nancy Camden, like I think she's only raced once this year, but I don't know, it's a pretty hot race. I think if I'd say if we go forward and try and find the pegs and see what happens then. Yeah, I wouldn't have any kind of illusions of winning that race, I don't think, to be honest.
It is a hot race. And Sarah, you've been burning the midnight oil looking at this Tir Prince card, I believe. What is Sarah Thomas looking forward to seeing tomorrow night?
Well, first of all, you know it's not strictly true that I've been burning any kind of oil whatsoever looking at this card, because I'm flicking through it right now. The mares race. I mean, Michael, you've gone through every horse in the race really, but I am genuinely looking forward to seeing this because the quality of mares that are racing in the Stagby Mares races now is absolutely exceptional. From where they've begun to where they are now, I mean, even if you took away the fact that there was a Group 1 final at the end of this series, these are standalone races, not just kind of qualifying legs, are absolutely fantastic. I couldn't pick a winner in that race. You can make a case for nearly every horse in the race anyway, so that one I'm just genuinely looking forward to seeing, because that could pan out any sort of way. You know, it's not going to be a surprise to me who wins that at all, because there is a case for everyone in that race. Of the other races, horses I'm looking forward to seeing. I'm looking forward to seeing how Oakwood Coral goes in the Dragoness. I know Michael's obviously got Oakwood Letsboogie there. You mentioned Rainbow Writer as well, coming in off the back of really good form at Tir Prince. But Oakwood Coral, I still felt after the second place finish behind Reed's Romance at York, that had the draws been switched, that was her opportunity to win a race there. I did speak to Paul Johnson. I did say I do think she's going to start becoming more competitive in these 3-year-old races next time out. And I think she was actually a late supplement into the race as well. So they must be kind of confident that Oakwood Coral could put in a big performance there. You know, against the likes of Rainbow Writer and Oakwood Letsboogie, who've already won it Tir Prince this year. I think Oakwood Coral's one to keep an eye on. In the other races, just flicking through quickly, because I didn't do this earlier. I have to mention Air Paparazzi. Michael, you've got Tyler Rowe motivator in the race. You mentioned Frankie B. Honor Code, obviously the unknown quantity, and then Roller Coaster. Air Paparazzi, albeit having only raced at Corbywood this season, comes in off quite a nice run at Corbywood last time out. I think the race actually went a good 3.5 seconds faster than any other race that night. Really, really solid performance there, Paparazzi. Turns out he has got a decent gate speed. Stays on okay at Corbywood, but it's a different kettle of fish coming down to Tir Prince off the back of just racing at Corbywood, so we'll see how that goes. There's a couple of other Scottish horses on the card as well, from the Patterson stable, horses that have been to York, come back to Corbywood, had success, and are now, you know, plying their trade away again. Whether or not they figure at Tir Prince, you know, we'll see tomorrow night. But I do expect those horses to come back to Corbywood the week after, and probably run very, very well off the back of wherever they finish at Tir Prince. There's very few, I think they're really competitive races. There's very few horses I can pick out at Tir Prince, but particularly I am looking forward to seeing the Stag Be Mares race.
Yeah, really looking forward to the card. The card also features the flying free for all with 6 paces going around there in hopefully an electrifying time. Fascinating race, that final race on the Tir Prince card tomorrow. So Tir Prince tomorrow or Saturday night, 8 races. First race 6:30, and it features the Group 1 Dragon and Dragoness races. So many thanks to Tregaron and Tir Prince for making that popular, possible even. York Sunday, Michael, you've got 3 drives, taking 2 horses to York on Sunday, I believe.
We're actually taking 3 Wellfield Warlock, but Paddy's driving that himself again because he gets a lift with C-Class, and he's got a very good record, and he's driven him 5 times now for 4 wins in a second, so I think we'll leave that partnership intact for now.
So a big chance, mile and a quarter?
Yeah, it's just a tricky one. Like, there's a couple of higher grade horses right on his back, Rob Hall and Merrington moving up, so I don't think he's good enough to beat moving up, but if he could finish second in that race, it'd be a good result, I think.
Yeah, that race starting in lines. And then your drives, you've got Dare to Dream. We've already touched on Dare to Dream. Comes into this on the back of that maiden win last week.
Yeah, I wouldn't be expecting to win it, to be honest. But if she can pace around properly and get a bit more experience, she could finish in the first 4. It'd be a bonus, to be honest.
A hot novice race, that, isn't it?
Yeah. There's a few in there that might be difficult to topple, I'd say.
And that has been the order of the day, hasn't it, really, over the last few weeks at York? Some really hot maiden and novice races. And then Lanehouse Girl goes for you a little later on. Yeah,
she was quite impressive in York there 2 weeks ago. She finished 4th, but she had no luck in the running and that, but she stayed on really well, and she won comfortable enough in Ammanford last week. I've never really pushed her out the gate before, but from that draw, I'm going to have to go forward and see what happens. Again, like, there's a couple of nice ones in the race. Darcy Camden won there a few weeks ago. Dreamfair Dukes on the back of another win last week. If he can lead, we'll try and sneak in somewhere if we can. But I think she's good enough to win that race if things pan out for her.
And then you're driving for Stevie at the end of the day, driving Teddy Camden.
Yeah, again, that's the bad draw there, like 9. It's just, I suppose, we'll just hunt around and see if we get a bit of luck, maybe an inside run or something like that. But Stevie's horses seem to be improving. They've got better each run, so I'd imagine if he had a better draw, he'd probably have a good chance in that race. But draw 9, it's going to be very difficult.
Okay, Sarah, your thoughts on the card, which starts with a Monty race.
Which I am very much looking forward to. I like something a bit different. I like these. These are fun. I'm interested to see how all of these horses go, to be honest. Obviously, the last time we had a Monty race was at Tir Prince, and I don't think any of these horses raced in it. So these are all unknown quantities in terms of Monty racing here. I do understand that Birdie Match has a good record out in France under saddle, and obviously was a winner last week at York, so comes into the race in pretty good form. Amadeo de Jalma has run particularly well the last twice at York, and Enes Amam was a winner at Amman Valley last week. Gary O'Grady goes up against the girls there in the Monty race. That to me is an interesting. It's going to be an interesting race just to watch as a spectator, as a fan of trotters or of saddle racing in general. But that one I'm looking forward to seeing how that pans out. Don't make me pick a horse in it because I don't know. That is the theme for the rest of this card. I'm not committing to any horses. I had a very good week last week. My dad told me I picked like 5 winners at York last week. So I've decided to retire whilst I'm on top, and now you just be really vague about every race. There's a ladies race as well with the trotters, another 5-horse race there with all the lady drivers driving. Again, it's interesting to see with the trotters, we've got things like the distance changing on a weekly basis, which already adds in a different dimension to it. But now when you're starting to put different drivers, and not necessarily drivers that have driven trotters before or very regularly, now it starts to completely change. It's like a different ball game again. The horse that could be the best horse in the race might not necessarily perform for that driver. There's all these different things. So I'm interested to see how that one goes as well. If you were going to make me pick, I mean, I want to say 3-pack. I love 3-pack. He's one of what I call one of the originals. I do think Corbywood is his track, because he's beating horses at Corbywood that on other tracks in the country would beat him, you know, every day of the week. Banco Teggi, I thought went quite well last week. I think it was for Paul Mather as well. But again, another wide open race to watch. Maiden and Novice. There's a couple of horses in the Maiden and Novice that I'd like to keep an eye on. Frisco Gotigo and Reed's Firefly are 2 horses that I've been following quite closely and have yet to get off the mark. But I do think that they've not really shown, they've not been too disappointing for Connections on the performances they've put in so far, because there have been quite a few stakes races in those starts. The 2 of them are kind of interested to see how they go there. Raymond Camden comes out of the qualifiers and workouts as well. So he's one to keep an eye on. Further on in the card, it's very, very competitive racing. I've got to say that. It's, you know, Dreamfade Duke later on in the card. He's in with Michael Lanehouse Girl. Dreamfade Duke was a winner last week. Andrew Cairns' driver. It was the only horse that Hamish Muir had brought down for the meeting. I thought he went particularly well. Andrew did seem to think that the 1.25 miles was what would suit him better. So I don't know, with that stepping back to a mile, maybe it'll get a little bit too speedy for him. But he has got the 1 draw. So be interested to see how he goes there. Darcy Camden, her form's dropped off a little bit. And Kick Up the Dust, Grant mentioned last week that Kick Up the Dust, he was looking to get back to the kind of form he'd shown earlier on at York, and he went quite well last week at Corbywood, finishing 2nd. So Kick Up the Dust, maybe one to keep an eye on as well. And then just super, super competitive. I don't know how anybody's meant to pick winners. I don't know how anybody backs winners. I don't know how bookmakers get on. I don't know how punters get on. For me, it's almost a lottery. The last race, I'd like to see Spring Hill Glory. I know he's drawn 10, but I would like to see Spring Hill Glory in the mix. He shows flashes of speed. We know he's a really, really good horse. He's going to be tortured with bad draws because of his handicap mark, but I do think Spring Hill Glory could put in a big run on Sunday.
Right, so one horse, Sarah, that's definitely going to win this weekend.
One horse that's definitely going to win. I am holding one up my sleeve because,
You've got a t-shirt.
well, figuratively speaking, there is a horse I am holding up my sleeve. I'm not going to give that one away because I want to see how far out I am. John, one horse I think is going to win this week. I'm going to say, based on his form, Merrington Moving Up. Obvious choice, I think, possibly, but I'm going with that. I'm not being bold this week.
Okay, Michael, one horse is definitely going to win.
I hope I'm a happy fella. I think Rocky Mambo will probably take a lot of beating in the free-for-all, Tir Prince.
Yeah.
Fancy him big time.
And I'll say Newtown Jody in the mares. Right, thank you guys for an overview of the weekend's racing at 2 wonderful meetings. Tir Prince starts at 6:30 on Saturday evening, and York starts at 4:25 on Sunday afternoon, and both meetings will be live streamed, and you'll be seeing the links today and tomorrow for those 2 meetings. Now, while we've got ace driver Michael Omani with us, a couple of points I'd like to touch on, Michael, with you. First, that very, very hot subject, the subject of the whip, which is forever under the microscope in global harness racing and indeed thoroughbred racing. We've had 1 or 2 issues over the last few weeks, and we're going to examine the rules and the penalties, etc. What's your take on the whip? First of all, would you be in the Norwegian camp, i.e. a complete whip ban?
Most definitely not, no. I think the whip's a very important tool if it's used correctly. Like Grant said last week, especially with young horses and different things, like it's more important to have it. To me, like the biggest issue is obviously the picking up of the abuse of the whip. I think now with the streaming and that, it's much easier. Like the camera work is much better. The quality of the videos. To me, I'd be more in favour of like retrospectively fining people or banning people for maybe in the middle of the week, if the stewards got together and watched a few races or pick a race each and count the strikes, and they could send somebody a message, an email from the office and say you're banned or you're fined. And it's quite simple. If there's more than a number of strikes there, you can't argue it. You don't need to call a steward's inquiry on the day or anything like that. You can do it afterwards. Some of the whipping has been shocking in York and that there. I don't know. I'd prefer that sort of a thing than banning the whip altogether anyway.
So,
probably hit people in their pocket as well. Double the fines every time if you get caught once, twice, double each time, and I think you could change people's attitudes by doing that probably.
and would you subscribe to a change then with the penalties? You mentioned about fining as opposed to a whip ban. Talk about suspensions.
Yeah, it wouldn't bother me. Like suspensions, probably that's the way the thoroughbreds go on that. But most things, if you hit people in their pocket, it's obviously going to benefit BHRC financially. And if you keep taking money off people after a while, they're going to get sick of it and start to change their ways.
I mean, you had a spell in Australia. I mean, what are their rules? I mean, does it vary from state to state, or do they have a national rules?
I'm not sure exactly. I'd say it varies from state to state and the number and that, but obviously they've got very good cameras and that, and the stewards, they've got professional stewards and that there, and they police it a lot better, I suppose. They're very much careful of the action and that and how the horse is hit. That's probably as important to them as the number of strikes is the way it looks. Because there's different ways you can hit a horse. But like once you start raising your arm quite high and that, like you're going to be getting, it doesn't look good anyway. The optics are very bad.
Yeah, so it's how you use the whip, not just the amount of strikes. Yeah. It's a hot topic, and I think it's one that's going to run for a bit. And I think we do need to review this properly on how we go about policing this and enforcing the rules. And it's a case of studying global rules, looking at how the professional countries police this area of the sport.
Yeah, and the stewards have a lot to do on the day, so that's why I think if it could be organised, maybe like for during the week or even before the next meeting, they could just look at the videos. It would take the pressure off the stewards a little bit on the day as well, because obviously there's not many stewards nowadays, and they've got a lot of other things to do as well. A lot of them help run the meetings and different things, so they don't want to slow things down by having stewards inquiries and that, but it's something, like you could just tell somebody they're fined for the whip. Like that's what I think they kind of do that abroad, maybe in America, that they just place a phone call down to the paddock and ask for a particular driver and just tell them they've got a fine. Obviously if there's an interference inquiry or something that affects the result of a race, you have to have an inquiry at the time, but most inquiries could be held afterwards.
That's an interesting point you've raised there about reviewing the videos, after racing in the week, when the stewards have more time to digest the information, absorb the information.
Yeah, if you split up the races and say you give 3 stewards 4 races each, and if they count them, they can communicate with each other then and pass the races back and forth and all. Like if they all come to the same conclusion, that's like it would work.
Now another hot topic, a topic that you're keen on reviewing. I know you've got your finger on the pulse here. Is handicapping, which is obviously it's very, over the decades it's been a very contentious issue here in GB, and we're going to review the handicap systems. And I know you've submitted a handicap system which I think is based on an Australasian system. So just to elaborate on this, what would you like to see? What sort of system would you like Great Britain to adopt?
Well, like to me, a handicap system has to account for current form, and horses have to be able to drop as well as rise in the handicap. When they're out of form or whatever, they could have 2 months where they're running bad. Currently, like what I call the system we have at the moment is just a penalty system, because once you get penalised, there's no real relief. Getting a drop at the end of the year when every other horse gets a drop is of no benefit to 90% of the horses probably. So to me, if you could, like the system I put in, if you basically you penalise the winner, leave the second and third horse alone, and you drop the horses that finish down the field. To me, it would be a lot fairer system anyway, and keep a lot more horses in training. Currently, like a horse I had last year, Cluan's Light for a while, Lee Vaughan's horse, like he had to sell him because he wasn't competitive here. He'd be running against your Rock and Mambos and Miraculous all the time. He hadn't won a race for 2 years or whatever, but he was running competitively but couldn't win. Whereas if he got a bit of relief throughout the season, he might have dropped down to a grade 7 and he could have won a race, and then he'd be back in with the other horses, but that would have been okay for Lee because he'd have had a win. But in the end, he had to sell the horse because like there was no point going through it all again this year. And there's numerous horses like that. They end up either in Ireland or in Wales and Borders. And both of those places have handicap systems that horses can drop. So all those type of horses can become competitive again, even if they start on a high mark. When they get over there, they after a few runs, they kind of start to get a chance to get some good form again.
And do you think this ratings-based system would work when you look at the numbers that you're dealing with over here, number of horses?
I think so. Like I think New Zealand were the first ones to implement it, and obviously Australia and a lot of states in Australia have done it now as well. It's basically like it wouldn't be any different to the system we have now, numbers-wise. But the races more or less will frame themselves, so it will take a lot of the pressure off your race framers. The draws would nearly automatically be done. You start at the top and work your way down through the horses, or start at the bottom and work your way up. A bit like York do at the moment in the Open Preferred races. I think there'll be less work for everybody. Obviously, changing the handicap system is going to cost money to do the database and all the different things in the office. But I just think the current system is just not fit for purpose, and it's affecting the sport and the number of horses and let out of training more so than the number of horses in training. And I don't know whether a fundraiser might be needed or something to help pay for it. But something needs to be done, I think.
And Australia now have adopted this system, I think, for the last couple of years with the ratings. I think the New Zealanders, they do the same. Is it working there? Has it been given the thumbs up?
Yeah, like I think I was reading something recently about Australia. The betting has they had a lot of like 6-horse races and that in certain states in Australia, and that because the way the races were framed before, it was like say similar to here, they would have had a grade, and the race was for a particular grade, whereas now they'll put a ratings band of maybe 50 to 70, and you can adjust the bands to make sure you've got full fields. So the betting turnover has increased quite a bit. And obviously there's less favourites winning because there's more horses in the races, and it makes it more competitive. Like York it's like the favourites, I don't know, obviously some favourites win in York, I don't know the numbers, John might know, Sarah, but I think York is very competitive. There's a lot of upsets there. You always get good prices there because there's so many horses in the race, and it's it's definitely, I think Australia seems to have found that anyway. I think that the race is more competitive, so there's better betting turnover.
So in this system, Michael, depending on the class of the race, you'd have the winner, as you were saying, going up maybe 1 point or a couple of points, and then horses down the field, they may drop a point or drop a couple of points. Yeah,
like I think if you finish maybe 4th or 5th, you might drop 1, and you finish worse than 5th, you could drop a couple, but the winner would probably go up a minimum of maybe 8 points. But as if they were winning a better race, they'd probably go up more. So they would be getting penalised more for winning the bigger money races, because that's another issue with the system we have. If you win a grade 1 in, say, Wales and Small Wales and West meeting, or you win a grade 1 in Tir Prince, you get them pulled the same. I know obviously the money is different, but you still, the one win just puts you up 1 grade. So like if you're racing for more money, you should probably start to go a little bit. You should get penalised more basically if you win more money, within reason. But I think it's the kind of system that would level itself out after a while. Obviously it'd be maybe hard to get it right at the start, but I think as the season progressed, I think it would every horse would find their own level quite quickly, and it would obviously I'm a believer in it anyway, but I think it could work. So the races will have rating bands? Yeah, basically I suppose you could do it several ways. Like you could, like York do now, you could advertise different distances within certain ratings and run them like preferred races, or you could run, like you can still run a non-winners race, or you could I had the idea of maybe all horses come in on a certain, I can't even remember what I put in now, say 15 points. But if you had a bad maiden, you could probably drop a few points and you could get down, and you could ever like give those horses a chance at one win anyway. Yeah, you can do lots of different wins. You could run all sorts of conditions. Like you can still run your mares races and different things, and penalise them on their ratings or their prize money or whatever, like Stag can do at the moment.
And Sarah, do you have a view on handicap systems?
I'd be interested to see the finer detail of your proposal, Michael, because listening to it, it's certainly got very, very valid points. I tend not to get drawn on conversations about the handicap system because I always think people think I've got my finger in too many pies as it is. But one thing I do have to say is I don't like the handicap system we use. I haven't liked it since I started coming racing and started to understand how it worked. I don't like that there is an arbitrary grade system which has been essentially just applied by the BHRC. People, I find particularly in Scotland, at Corbywood, that people are obsessed with this grade. I'm a grade 1 and I want my 20-yard head start on a grade 3. It's a number. It's a number that's been applied by the British Harness Racing Club. It's just a system that exists. It doesn't mean anything. If you change the numbers, it would be different numbers that were applied to you. It's completely irrelevant to how good your horse is, quite frankly. But there's this obsession with, oh, well, I'm a grade 1 or I'm a grade 2. And I don't like that numbering system to start with. Then when you add in the whole money's one part of it as well, so you've got the grade, then the money, it's complicated. I don't know how anybody looking in is supposed to understand it. To me, frankly, any system is better than the system we've got right now. Really, really blunt about it. I really, really dislike it. The main reason that I dislike it is what Michael's picked up on, is the sheer number of horses that are forced out of our system by it being so uncompetitive. You know, I was watching the racing from the Red John Memorial weekend there in Cork the weekend, and the number of horses that were in that major final that were British horses, not any British bred horses, but horses that raced here. And we're talking about horses that are 9, 10, 11, 12 years old. They are racing horses, they're 14 in Ireland. They are still competitive. They are allowed to come back down the system. They become uncompetitive at the level they race at. You know, they're encouraged to keep these horses in training for longer, and that is where we fall massively short. I mean, and Wales and Borders is exactly the same. They've got a lift system, and I know there are so many people who are against lift systems because it encourages non-trying, but there are ways to deal with the non-trying element of it. There are punishments you can hand out. There is the monitoring of races in the same way as Michael was discussing, you know, retrospective action against whip use. You know, you can review races for non-trying as well. You can try and stamp out. If that is the only downside of applying in-season lifts, then you can address that as a problem, because the benefit that could come from it is far greater, in my opinion, than that one thing that could become an issue. And eventually you get to a point where people are just so desperate to win races that non-trying almost stamps itself out. Yeah, I suddenly got very passionate about that subject there.
5 minutes ago.
I don't like our handicap system. I never have. I like to see horses race for a long time. I like to see horses race and be competitive for their connections. As much as I like to see new horses come through the system, new horses come in every year. They come in through the stakes races. They come in through just the maiden and novice route. I like to see new faces, but there are horses that I watch them race and I think, you are a really, really good racehorse. You're not winning races. Your connections are going to they're basically going to stop training you at some point, and you are going to disappear, and I'm not going to get to see you unless I start following either Ireland or Wales and Border Counties racing, which I do anyway, which is kind of besides the point. But I want to see these horses race in our system. I want to go to a race meeting and watch them race at a race meeting that I was already going to be at. So it needs reviewed. There are smarter people than me who understand everything better than I do, who can, you know, kind of get their heads together and work on something, but it is something that does need to be addressed.
Just
Michael.
You were saying about the Red John and that there, I think this year they've they obviously changed the format, and they took the top 16 handicapped horses, and talking to people in Ireland, I think there's been a lot less non-trying in that in Portmarnock throughout the season building up to the Red John, because people were trying to get their horses up the handicap rather than wait on the lower grade because they knew where it was starting. And I think with something like a rating system, say Tregarin or somewhere like that, I'd encourage them to like take the top 6 or 8 horses for a free for all, and the next say 50 for the big money, and nobody would know where it starts. So everybody's going to want to be on the higher end just to be sure to get in there.
Yeah.
As like it's happened, it's worked in Ireland this week, and I think it could. I think that's something we need to look at as well, because the better horses have to race for better money to keep them, especially now with all the horses getting shipped to America. There's going to be a proper shortage of free-for-all horses in this country. I'd imagine there'll be a couple more going over the winter, and obviously Rocky Mambo is going, and if they were able to race for £1,000 every week or whatever to the winner, they'd be more inclined to stay in this country.
I'm hoping we've kick-started something here, because it needed kick-starting. We sent out a few handicap proposals with a calendar a couple of months ago, and you may believe this or not, but we had no feedback whatsoever. Maybe it's because people are just focused on the season at hand and they haven't got time to think about it, but we need to start reviewing it now. If there's going to be any hope whatsoever of a change for 2021, if we feel there's a need for a change in 2021, we need to be reviewing it now, and we're seriously now going to step up that review over the coming weeks. Great points, Michael, great points. I'm a believer in the rating system, and I understand it through being involved in thoroughbred racing. Our horse can go up and down at any time. I'm a firm believer in that. But Michael, some great points about the whip as well. Excellent points about the whip and handicapping. And just to finish on maybe a lighter note, what about your days in Australia? I know you were Mr. Popular at Gloucester Park, known as Paddy to the locals. How long were you actually out there in Oz with Meadowbranch DJ?
3 months. The Paddy came from when I was in New Zealand. I worked for Dexter Dunn's dad for 13 months or so, and they started calling me Paddy, and obviously Dexter knew Bondi, and that's where he stayed with DJ. We contacted him beforehand because the Meadowbranch lads had been offered a couple of places to stay. So I messaged Dexter and asked him about where would be best, and he said Bondi's place. It's great Bond. He was they had everything there: swimming pool, hard track, sand track, paddocks. Pretty nice place they had. But yeah, it was a good 3 months. Yeah, things didn't work out with the horse. It was a shame. He got sick on the way over on the plane, and yeah, he never really recovered because he had to be in training and trying to get ready for the race, and there was a lot of pressure put on the lads, I think, to run the horse as well, because the Australians had spent a lot of money to get him there, and it just didn't really work out at all, to be honest. It was just a pity.
But what about your experience? I mean, I didn't appreciate you were actually in New Zealand as well. Would you say that both, the countries, New Zealand and Australia, they're similar, the way they organise racing, the style of racing, is that similar in the two countries?
It's probably more aggressive in Australia, the style of racing. There's probably more mile races and that, and they definitely probably go there's more speed in the races. Although New Zealand is getting faster all the time as well, but they're more they run probably more distance races and standing starts. They run on the grass quite a bit. But I suppose Mark Purdon is a New Zealand-based trainer, and he's definitely one of the top 3 trainers in the world, probably. He's a bit of a freak, the guy, I think, Mark Purdon. But yeah, I think New Zealand is the best country in the world, bar here, I suppose. It's somewhere I'd love to be, only it's just so far away. Style, just the lifestyle and everything, people. I'd probably, the Kiwi people are pretty nice, yeah.
I'd go along with that. Sarah, you've got to put it on your bucket list. The New Zealand Trotting Cup, 2nd Tuesday in November.
It is on the bucket list. It's on the bucket list in addition to the World Driving Championships. I think are out there in 2023. That's on the list. It's all on the list. Every time that I see Dexter, and I bump into him sometimes when I'm over in America now, and I try to plan it, but it's one of those trips. It's going to take a bit more than me just deciding a couple of months beforehand, yes, let's go. But it definitely is on the bucket list of places to go to. And
I do echo your sentiments, Michael. I mean, I met Mark McNamara through your good self. He was the ace race caller in New Zealand. I thought, what a great job. Calling the thoroughbreds and the trots several times a week, driving from track to track, nobody on the roads in New Zealand because the population is less than Scotland, and that's 2 islands combined. Oh, it was brilliant. Absolutely. I just love the pace of life and the way of life. Really good. So yeah, it's a must. It's a must. Now, Michael, coming back from Australia and New Zealand, you know, what, in terms of your job as a trainer or a driver, one single aspect of your job that you brought back from Australia in how you could improve the driving or the training, what did you learn from Australia? What was the most important factor, would you say?
I suppose more from my time in New Zealand and that I was there for longer, and it was probably all new to me at the time. They seem to just train the horses maybe a bit slower than, say, maybe the American style of training, but train them over further. That's something I do a lot of myself now. I'd rarely train a horse over a mile, usually probably a mile and a half, and just run it like a last quarter and that kind of thing. So probably, and I do maybe a good bit of cantering as well when we can and stuff. They're big into that down there. I suppose the driving, like, I don't know, we drove a few times in both countries. It was very competitive. Like there's no, because they can push you in and push you out in Australia and New Zealand. They can push you down at the start and push you out then when you get to the last maybe 600 meters or 800 meters. So you got to be like right on the helmet of the horse in front and that, and you got to travel up pretty good. But it was all good experience. To be honest, there's a lot of it. Like you use little bits all the time. Yeah, especially like because I was in New Zealand for that bit longer. I suppose there was probably more things I picked up there. A lot of what I seen in Australia, maybe I'd seen anyway. Yeah, there was probably a few bits and pieces you use everywhere you go, really.
And you mentioned standing starts. Are you a fan of standing starts?
Not particularly, no.
No.
New Zealand Cup, the biggest race down there, is a standing start and that, but I think they've mostly done away with them in Australia now. There's very few of them left, and I don't know, New Zealand seem to be hanging on to them, but I suppose they add to the drama a little bit, maybe, especially for a big race like New Zealand Cup, because you don't know if your horse is going to miss away and gallop and do whatever. But I suppose ideally they should probably do away with them. Is it just tradition? Is there a reason? Is it because their fields are bigger than normal? Or no, it's just I'd say they've got a field limit size anyway. Maybe they let a couple of more horses into a standing start race than they do in a mobile race. But I think it's just a tradition. Like New Zealand Cup's always been a stand start. The Auckland Cup, there's a few of those big races. They've always been stands. So it is just tradition. But I suppose tradition always has to end sometime, and I'd imagine it will in the near future. I think like the betting side of things is probably putting a bit of pressure on them to change it anyway.
Yes.
But, yes.
It's very, very strong, isn't it, in New Zealand compared to thoroughbred racing in terms of, well, it holds its own against thoroughbred racing in terms of betting turnover and popularity.
Yeah, it's probably, it's definitely on a par, if not higher. It's probably the most popular equine sport in New Zealand. They breed a lot of good stayers and the gallopers as well, but the trotting side of things, obviously when you look at the cards in America now, there's an untold amount of horses with the in after their name or whatever. It's and Australia, like a lot of the horses racing in Australia are New Zealand bred as well. So it's affecting the horse population, I suppose, in New Zealand. A lot of the horses have been shipped abroad, but I suppose it keeps people going when they're breeding and that. Like you got to keep breeding new stock in to keep replacing the old ones, so the breeders are doing well out of it.
And of course, Brian Davis, many moons ago, he brought New Zealand stock over to these shows.
He did, yeah. He was. So Brian's got a lot of connections down there through the shearing thing and all that. I suppose is what he. I suppose that's how he ended up going down there, and he brought some mares in.
Now, you mentioned your nickname in Australia was Paddy. Have you got a nickname in GB?
No, I've never had a nickname, I'd say, to be honest. Not that I know of.
Listen, Sarah, we're trying to sell the stars of our sport. And for me, the stars of the sport, the horses and the drivers. And a few of the guys on the circuit have got nicknames.
Well, yeah, some of them have. It depends who you ask on who the nicknames are. I mean, Grant Cullen has no official nickname, but if you ask Alan Greenhorn when he's our slightly inebriated commentator at Corbywood, he's got a terrible nickname. Maybe we should. I had this conversation actually with Joseph Riley the other day about I get a lot of drivers, particularly drivers from the northeast, message me after a race meeting. Did you get any photos of me, Sarah? It doesn't matter where they finish in a race, they want a photo, and it's so they can put it on Facebook so all their non-racing friends can see how cool they look doing what they do on the weekends. And I said the reason that people like me is because I go about making them look like rock stars. And I think maybe this is what I should be doing more. I think maybe we should have like I'm not saying a competition, because I don't want to maybe share the task of naming people, but I think maybe we should start looking at nicknames for some of the drivers, because it would make them seem even more like rock stars than they already are. I think they're really cool. I think the drivers are really cool. I think, having watched the accident at Corbywood the other week, they are slightly insane to do what they do. I wouldn't do it because I kind of want to stay alive with all of my limbs. But yeah, nicknames would be good. I mean, drivers can come up with their own nicknames if they want, but people generally don't want to do that because they don't want to come off as being a bit naff by having given themselves a nickname. So I don't know, maybe we should start just giving them nicknames.
And how are you getting on photos? You're talking about doing some photos of all the drivers to include their headshots in the race card in the future.
Yes. Yeah, I haven't started that, but I will start it. I mean, it would be easier if a lot of them weren't wearing face masks. So I need to try and get the drivers in the paddock by themselves. This is starting to sound really dodgy. So that I can get them to take their face masks off and we can have a photo. But it hasn't started yet. But I am going to do it. It'll be ready for 2021, hopefully.
Right, Michael, we're going to sell you now. Can I christen you the Cucumber? Because you are as cool as
I can't do with this.
It's probably easier to say than my surname anyway. A lot of people struggle with that, so
I want to say it's another one for the Cucumber. Because you're cool as one.
I don't know about that. It doesn't really bother me what people call me, so
okay. We're trying to sell you.
I don't think many people buy cucumbers, to be honest. But they're a big punch.
I feel like we need to get off the cucumber subject here. Yes, we'll come up with. We'll think of something. Just not cucumber. I can't have you announcing that in a race, Darren, because I need to concentrate.
Yeah, some people might take it the wrong way.
Michael, thank you very much for sparing the time to speak to the Sulky show tonight. Some great insights and great views on the whip and handicapping, and wonderful to talk about your horses this weekend. And we wish you all the very best at Tir Prince and York this weekend. Michael and Marnie, thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah.
You're welcome, and I'm glad you mentioned it right at the end there. O'Mahony. For everybody who's watching this, is your last chance. He is not Mahoney, and he is not O'Mahony. He is O'Mahony. Just say it like that. Say it like Darren says it. Say it like I say it, or don't say it at all, or just call him the Cucumber.
The Cucumber.
Thank you.
Right, guys. Thanks for watching the Sulky show. Until next time. Bye bye.